In a white mansion nestled in the upscale neighborhood of Beverly Hills, California, Lauren Miller cradled her 1-year-old daughter Emily while negotiating a business deal over the phone. "Yes, I believe we can close on that property for $4 million. I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow." Lauren had made a name for herself as one of the region's top real estate investors. Despite being a single mother, her sharp intuition and decisiveness had led to numerous successful large-scale deals, and she had now established stable wealth and status. As she ended the call, Emily reached out with her tiny hand to touch her mother's face. Lauren gently held those soft fingers and smiled. Emily meant everything to her. After an unexpected pregnancy and separation from the baby's father, she had made the difficult decision to raise her daughter alone. It had been the most courageous choice of her life, but she didn't regret it for a single moment. The doorbell rang, and Lauren opened the door with Emily still in her arms. Her mother, Betty, stood there. "How's Emily doing?" Betty reached out for her granddaughter, but Emily clung to her mother and refused to let go. "She's such a mama's girl," Betty muttered with a hint of irritation in her voice. Though Betty claimed to be proud of her daughter's success, Lauren didn't miss the envy lurking behind her mother's eyes. For Betty, who had worked as a high school teacher and lived modestly, her daughter becoming far wealthier than herself had likely stirred complicated emotions. "Aren't Carol and Thomas coming today?" Lauren asked, and Betty's expression softened slightly. "Carol is at Jim's job interview today. I wanted to bring Thomas along, but he's a bit under the weather, so I left him at home." Lauren's sister Carol had a 2-year-old son named Thomas, but her husband Jim had recently lost his job, putting them in financial difficulty. Carol had once aspired to become a nurse, but she got pregnant and married young, abandoning her studies. Since then, she had drifted between part-time jobs, never securing stable income. "I see. I hope the interview goes well," Lauren said with genuine concern. She truly wished for her sister's family to find financial stability. Betty sat down in the living room and sighed. "You're really blessed, Lauren. Living in such a beautiful home." Her compliment was thinly veiled envy. "I'm worried about Carol and Jim. They're not doing as well as you are," Betty continued. "All of us are hoping you might lend a hand." These conversations had become routine. Whenever Betty and Carol visited Lauren's home, they would envy her success and subtly ask for assistance. Lauren had already covered several months of rent for her sister's family and helped with Thomas's daycare expenses, but there was always an unspoken feeling that it wasn't enough. Lauren gazed out the window, remembering her childhood. Her relationship with Carol had always been competitive. Betty had always treated Carol as the sensitive and special child, while considering Lauren strong and independent, offering her less emotional support. As a result, Carol constantly felt inferior to Lauren, and Lauren always had to work hard to prove her love. "By the way, how's Emily's daycare?" Betty asked. "It's very good. The educational program is excellent, and Emily seems to enjoy it." Betty frowned. "But with a busy mother like you, I'm sure you're often late picking her up. That's tough on a child." Such indirect criticism was commonplace. Betty and Carol constantly criticized Lauren's parenting as a single mother, and Lauren had heard from friends that they gossiped behind her back, saying, "Having money doesn't make her a good mother." Emily began to look sleepy, so Lauren stood up, cradling her. "I'm sorry, Mom. It's Emily's nap time." Betty momentarily displayed a dissatisfied expression before quickly hiding it. "Of course, that's fine. I was planning to go shopping anyway. I have plans to meet Carol tomorrow, so I'll let her know if you need anything." Betty and Carol met several times a week and were always in close contact. Lauren sensed that she was often the central topic of their conversations. After Betty left, Lauren put Emily to bed and quietly watched her sleeping face. Though part of her wanted to distance herself completely from her mother and sister, she also wanted Emily to have a relationship with her grandmother and aunt. She believed family bonds, however complicated, should be cherished. "I want you to be happy, Emily," Lauren whispered. "I'll protect you." Those words carried her determination to shield her daughter from the complex web of family emotions she had experienced. On a warm, sunny Thursday afternoon, Lauren was feeding Emily a snack while checking her weekend schedule. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and she looked at the clock. It was an unexpected visitor. When she opened the door, Betty stood there looking excited. She clutched large paper bags in both hands, and her expression seemed brighter than usual. "Lauren, I've brought something wonderful." Betty marched into the living room without removing her shoes and took a can from one of the paper bags. It was an elegant, glossy gold can with a European-style design. "This is it, Lauren. It's special baby formula." Betty held the can high, treating it like a treasure. "It makes babies smarter." It was really expensive. Lauren frowned as she took the can. "Mom, Emily is fine with regular formula. Actually, I've been combining it with breastfeeding lately." "This is different," Betty interrupted, beginning an enthusiastic explanation. "This is imported from Europe, top quality. It contains special nutrients that promote brain development. You absolutely can't buy this in regular stores." Betty's eyes glowed strangely. "Use it only for Emily. It's special, so don't give it to other children." Though Lauren felt uncomfortable with her mother's unusual enthusiasm, she outwardly expressed gratitude. "Thank you, Mom. But you really didn't need to buy something so expensive." "It's fine, she's my only granddaughter," Betty said, then added in a lower voice, "Carol's child doesn't need it. Thomas is already 2, and he doesn't have the same potential as this child." Lauren felt disgusted by those words. Thomas was an innocent, adorable boy. Betty's favoritism between grandchildren wasn't new, but today it was particularly blatant. As Betty was leaving, she turned back once more. "Remember, use it only for Emily. Let me know if you see results." After her mother left, Lauren examined the gold can in the living room. The label was in a foreign language, but the ingredient list differed subtly from regular formula. Rather than containing special nutrients, it seemed that some normal ingredients were missing. Intuitively feeling something was wrong, Lauren called her mother. "Mom, where did you buy this formula? The ingredient list seems different from regular ones." Betty's voice hardened on the other end. "Don't overthink it. I'm just looking out for you. I only want to give Emily the best." "But is it safe?" "Of course. It's special because it's expensive. Trust me." Even after hanging up, Lauren's uneasiness persisted. She opened the can, took a small amount on her finger, and smelled it. It had a slightly more bitter scent than regular formula. "I can't give this to Emily." Lauren resolved this and put the can in the back of a kitchen cabinet. Her maternal instincts were warning her about her mother's strange behavior and the unnatural quality of the formula. On the weekend, while Lauren was playing with Emily in the garden, a sudden knock sounded at the front door. When she opened it, her sister Carol stood there with her son Thomas. "I thought I'd drop by for a visit," Carol said with a smile. Her expression seemed brighter than usual and somewhat unnatural. "Please, come in," Lauren invited her sister and nephew inside, though somewhat surprised. While drinking tea in the living room, Carol talked about Thomas's recent developments and her husband's job search. The conversation seemed friendly on the surface, but something else lurked in Carol's eyes. "So, how's Emily?" Carol asked, and Lauren picked up her daughter. "Very well. She's starting to learn new words lately." "That's good," Carol said, but her words lacked genuine joy. As the conversation progressed, Carol changed the subject as if by chance. "By the way, Thomas has had a poor appetite lately, and I'm worried. I wish someone could recommend a good formula." In that moment, Lauren remembered the formula from Betty that she'd hidden in the back of her cabinet. Suddenly, she understood. This wasn't a coincidental visit. Had Carol heard something from Betty and come here for that reason? But why would her mother say the formula should only be given to Emily, while Carol seemed to want it? This contradiction strengthened Lauren's suspicions. Making a split-second decision, Lauren said, "Actually, I have some extra formula, but it didn't agree with Emily. Would you like to take it?" Carol's eyes lit up momentarily. "Really? That would be helpful." Lauren retrieved the gold can from the cabinet and handed it to Carol. Mom brought it over. She said it was special, but it didn't work for us. After receiving the can, Carol stood up, looking somewhat rushed. Thank you, Lauren. This really helps. Well, we should be going now. Thomas, say goodbye to your aunt. As little Thomas waved bye-bye, Lauren felt uneasiness spreading in her chest. She had acted on her intuition, but was her judgment correct? That night, Lauren checked a message from Carol on her mobile phone. Thomas is happily drinking it. Thank you. It was a simple message, but something felt unnatural about it. However, there was no use dwelling on it further. Lauren trusted her judgment and began preparing for an important real estate contract the next day, retiring early. As the morning sun began streaming through the window on Friday morning, Lauren was preparing breakfast in the kitchen while holding Emily. Her 1-year-old daughter sat in a high chair, picking up cereal with her small hands. A peaceful morning routine. However, it was disrupted by a sudden visit. The sound of aggressive knocking echoed, followed by the doorbell ringing repeatedly. Lauren opened the door in confusion to find Betty standing there, her face ashen. Her expression was more distraught than Lauren had ever seen before. Lauren. Betty cried out. I heard from Carol. Why did you give her that formula? Betty pushed her way into the living room, looking around frantically. Where's the can? Is there any left? Lauren maintained her composure as she grabbed her mother's arm. Mom, calm down. What happened? Why are you so upset? Betty's eyes were wide with fear. Did you really give that formula to Carol? Why did you do that? It was special and should have been given only to your child. Special in what way? Lauren asked. You said the formula would make Emily smarter, but I couldn't believe it. And when I examined the can, I felt something was wrong. Betty stumbled over her words, then suddenly pulled out her smartphone. With trembling fingers, she called Carol. Carol? Thomas hasn't drunk that formula yet, has he? Do not use it. Throw it away immediately. There's no time to explain. Just do as I say. After hanging up, Betty's face was covered in sweat. She collapsed onto the sofa and held her head in her hands. Lauren stood before her mother and said in a cold voice, Mom, tell me the truth right now. What was in that formula? Betty looked up and weakly replied, special, nutrients. Just for Emily. Don't lie. Lauren's voice cut sharply through the air. Your reaction makes it clear that the formula was dangerous. Were you trying to harm Emily? Betty covered her face with both hands. That wasn't what I intended. Just. At that moment, Lauren's smartphone rang. It was Carol calling. Lauren answered on speakerphone. Carol? Lauren, Mom suddenly called and told me to throw away the formula. What's going on? Thomas had a little yesterday, but there was no problem. Lauren caught her breath. How's Thomas? Is there anything unusual? No, he's fine. But. Carol's voice was filled with confusion. Why is Mom panicking so much? Lauren, staring at Betty, replied, That's what I'd like to know too. Mom, can you explain? After a moment of silence, Carol's voice came through again. Mom, what happened? Doesn't she know about the formula yet? Those words froze Lauren. Carol's statement seemed to suggest complicity. She apparently didn't realize the call was on speakerphone. Carol, what are you talking about? Lauren asked calmly. On the other end, Carol hurriedly said, Oh, nothing. Just a misunderstanding. Thomas is fine, so don't worry. Lauren made a decision. Carol, bring the formula here right now. Let's all talk together, including Mom. After hesitating, Carol answered, All right. I'll be there in 30 minutes, and hung up. Silence returned to the living room. Lauren lifted Emily from her high chair and held her tightly. Then she turned to face her mother. Mom, I'll ask you one more time. What was in that formula? Betty answered with trembling lips, special. It wasn't special, was it? Lauren interrupted. It was something dangerous? That's why you're panicking now. Tears began flowing from Betty's eyes. Lauren, you don't understand. You're always perfect, always successful, you left nothing for us. What are you saying? If you didn't have a child, you wouldn't be living such a wealthy life. You would have paid more attention to us. Betty cried out. In that moment, something broke inside Lauren. While maintaining her composure, she took out her smartphone and called the police. Betty stared at her daughter with terror-filled eyes. What are you doing? The obvious thing, Mom, Lauren answered coldly. I don't know what you and Carol were trying to do, but I won't allow you to put Emily in danger. That's not it. Betty cried. I just wanted you to understand how much we're suffering by endangering a baby with formula. Lauren's voice trembled with anger. Do you think that can be justified? The doorbell rang, and Carol had arrived. Her face was pale, and she clutched the gold can in her hand. What's happening? Carol asked as she entered the room, but her eyes sought out Betty. Mom, why suddenly? I called the police, Lauren stated briefly. The color drained from Carol's face. The police? Why? I want you both to explain to the police what you were trying to do. Carol looked at Betty. Mom, you said. Be quiet. Betty shouted. Don't say anything. With this reaction, Lauren's suspicions turned to certainty. She held Emily close and looked out the window. Police sirens were approaching. 10 minutes later, a police officer stood in the living room, trying to understand the situation. Lauren submitted the formula can as evidence and explained her mother and sister's strange behavior. Could you have this formula analyzed? Lauren requested. I'm not a chemistry expert, but I believe something dangerous has been added to it. The police took Betty and Carol away for separate questioning. Both maintained their silence, only exchanging glances with each other. Lauren stood in the garden, watching the police vehicles drive away. Her heart was filled with anger and sadness, but most of all, relief. She was grateful that her intuition had been correct and, most importantly, that Emily was safe. It's okay, now, Lauren whispered, burying her face in Emily's soft hair. Mommy will protect you. However, this was only the beginning. Lauren needed to take further action to discover the truth about the formula. She took out her smartphone and called Marcus, a friend from college who was now a chemist. Marcus? It's Lauren. I need some professional help. At dusk, Lauren put Emily to bed and gazed at the sunset outside the window. It was still difficult to accept the reality of her family's betrayal, but she had to be strong. For Emily's sake. I need to know the truth, she told herself. And I will never let them near Emily again. Tomorrow, Marcus would bring the test results for the formula. And then, all the truth would be revealed. Saturday morning, Lauren paced anxiously around the living room. Emily was playing with toys on the floor, but perhaps sensing her mother's tension, she was quieter than usual. The police had taken Betty and Carol in for questioning yesterday, but both had been released due to insufficient evidence. When Lauren was informed of their release, she felt a chill in her chest. But she reassured herself that this was temporary. Once the truth came to light, they would be held accountable. At 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. Lauren quickly opened the door to find Marcus, her friend since college who now worked at a chemical research institute. His expression was severe, and he had a file tucked under his arm. Come in, Marcus, Lauren invited her friend in. Thank you, really. Marcus entered the living room, smiled at Emily, then looked at Lauren with a serious expression. The results are in, Lauren. I should warn you, it's not good news. Lauren took a deep breath and sat on the sofa. Tell me. Marcus opened the file and pulled out the analysis results. This formula contains a dangerous amount of sleeping pills. Specifically, it's a powerful sleep-inducing drug that requires a prescription. It's dangerous even for adults in large doses, but for a baby. He choked on his words. It could cause serious health damage, and in the worst case, death. Lauren covered her face with trembling hands. Her worst fears had become reality. Her mother and sister had tried to put her baby in danger. Not just mischief, but serious, life-threatening danger. However, Marcus continued, looking at the dosage, one intake wouldn't be fatal. It seems they intended for continuous administration. Meaning they weren't trying to kill immediately, but gradually harm the health. To make Emily sick, and eventually. Lauren couldn't speak those words. Marcus nodded silently. I've already contacted the police. With these results, they'll begin a full investigation. True to his word, by afternoon, Lauren received a call from the police informing her that Betty had been formally arrested on attempted murder charges based on the analysis results. Carol had also been taken in as an accomplice, and questioning was underway. The next day, Lauren was called to the police station. There, she would learn shocking facts. Ms. Miller, Detective Harris said, Carol has confessed. She admitted that she and your mother planned to harm Emily. Lauren was speechless. But, why? Jealousy and resentment toward you, Harris said matter-of-factly. Carol eventually told everything in the interrogation room. We hated Lauren's life. She was always better than me, successful, pretending to be a perfect mother. Harris continued, looking at the police records. She further stated, if Emily wasn't around, Lauren would have returned to her old life and paid more attention to us. Anger and sadness washed over Lauren. Learning the depth of the ugly emotions her mother and sister harbored made her body tremble. What was their plan? She asked in a small voice. When we searched Betty's house, we found prescription sleeping pills and evidence that she had been experimenting with mixing them into formula. Furthermore, Harris hesitated for a moment. We discovered photos of you and Emily that had been defaced. Lauren closed her eyes. She didn't even want to imagine it. Betty's diary contained entries about her jealousy and resentment toward your success and happy life. The thought, if only Emily weren't around, Lauren would go back to being the daughter she used to be, was written repeatedly. And Carol? Numerous messages were found on Carol's phone discussing plans with Betty. They were also talking about creating alibis to make it look like an accident with Emily. Lauren listened in disbelief. The family she grew up in, the mother who raised her, the sister she played with. The depth of hatred they harbored was beyond Lauren's understanding. Ms. Miller, Harris said gently, you took very brave action. If you had given that formula to Emily. He left the sentence unfinished, but Lauren understood. Her intuition and judgment had saved her daughter's life. One more thing, Harris continued. When you gave the formula to Carol, she told you she would give it to Thomas, but apparently she had no such intention. According to Carol's statement, she planned to confirm that the formula had been returned and report to Betty that the plan had failed. So Thomas didn't actually. He didn't drink the formula. Carol lied just to reassure you. Hearing this, Lauren felt slightly relieved. At least an innocent child hadn't been endangered. What will happen to them? Lauren asked. They'll await trial. There's sufficient evidence, so a guilty verdict is certain. Betty will receive a long sentence for attempted murder, and Carol will serve a prison term as an accomplice. Lauren nodded quietly. Justice would be served. But the reality that family bonds had been permanently broken weighed heavily on her heart. After leaving the police station, Lauren sat on a park bench and looked up at the twilight sky. Emily was sleeping in her stroller. How did it come to this? She asked the sky. She pondered how jealousy and resentment could so distort a person's heart. Just then, her cell phone rang. It was from an unknown number. Lauren, a male voice said. This is Jim Taylor. Carol's husband. Lauren was momentarily speechless. Jim. I heard everything, his voice was filled with sadness. What Carol and Betty tried to do. I can't believe it. About Thomas. Thomas? He knows nothing about this. He's just confused that his mother has been arrested. You're his aunt. If possible, could I bring him to see you sometimes? He's innocent in all this. Lauren felt her heart constrict. Thomas was indeed an innocent victim. He bore no guilt. Of course, Jim, she answered gently. Thomas can come visit anytime. He's my nephew. And if you need anything, just let me know. I'll do whatever I can. After hanging up, Lauren gazed at Emily's sleeping face. We'll move forward, she whispered softly. Living with love, not hatred. The following week at the trial, Lauren stood in court and gave her final words. I cannot forgive my mother and sister who tried to hurt my daughter. But I choose to live with love, not hatred. That's the value I want to teach my daughter. And then she left the courtroom. 5 years passed. In the garden of the mansion in Beverly Hills' upscale neighborhood, 6-year-old Emily played and laughed with friends. Watching over her, Lauren's face wore a gentle smile. Over the past 5 years, Lauren's real estate business had expanded further, and she was now known as one of the most successful female entrepreneurs on the West Coast. But for her, the most important success was Emily's healthy growth. Mom, look! Emily shouted with outstretched arms. She proudly held up a picture she had drawn. It showed a mother and daughter holding hands. That's a beautiful picture, Emily, Lauren hugged the little artist. Back inside, a letter that had arrived this morning lay on the table. It was an official document from the federal court, informing her that Betty and Carol's parole applications had been denied. Since the incident, Betty had been serving her sentence in a women's prison. She had consistently refused visitation, and Lauren had heard her health was gradually deteriorating. Isolated from other inmates, the anger and resentment in her heart hadn't diminished at all. In letters occasionally sent, she still blamed Lauren, claiming she had only done what was right. Carol was also serving her sentence. Initially, she had thought her excuse of being influenced by her mother would work, but the evidence of messages and active involvement in planning revealed her full participation, resulting in a heavy sentence. In prison, she continued manipulative behavior, trying to use other inmates and becoming isolated as a result. 7-year-old Thomas was being raised by his father Jim and his new wife Jennifer, growing up while receiving psychological therapy. True to her promise, Lauren provided financial support and educational funds to ensure Thomas would walk a different path than his mother. Once a month, Thomas visited Lauren's home to play with Emily. The innocent friendship between the two children was proof that the dark shadows of the past wouldn't reach the future. Mom, is Thomas coming today? Emily asked. Yes, soon. Uncle Jim will bring him. Lauren gazed out the window. She had overcome her mother and sister's betrayal and found a new form of family. She had learned there are things more important than blood ties. Love and respect, that's what makes a real family, Lauren often taught Emily. The doorbell rang. Lauren took her daughter's hand and headed to the entrance. I love you, Emily. You're my treasure, Lauren kissed her daughter's cheek. Now, let's welcome Thomas. As she opened the door and greeted Jim and Thomas with a smile, Lauren thought, beyond past pain, she had built new happiness through her own choices. And as the letter from the court had shown her, justice exists in this world. It was a definite step toward the future.